What's going on, everybody? This is Al from PlaybookGamer.com, and today I want to start a new series, and that is the Create a Playbook series. Just like the Create a School series, what I want to do is create a playbook, try to mimic a real-life offense, show you which formations that I would put together to create the playbook, on top of which plays that I would run to try to get as close as I can to that scheme. And I want to start off with the Peyton Manning Indianapolis Colts offense of the mid-2000s. It's one of the most prolific offenses in NFL history, and it's quite doable in a game such as NCAA Football 06. Now, I'm going to use 06 as my template, but you can take a lot of this information and use it in your game of choice. I just want to point you in the right direction. That way you have a good idea of what the offense is all about, and you can start using it on your end. Now, before we get into the playbook, I want to mention a couple of resources that I have put in the description below. The first is a playlist that I have put together of over 50 games from that era with the Colts. Over 200 hours of great content there. You can check out the offense in its entirety and what it's all about. I also will add a link to an article from Chris Brown at smartfootball.com. He done an incredible job of breaking down what that offense is all about in like a couple thousand words. He done a whole lot better job of it than I ever could. But what I want to show you is how you can throw it into a game like 06. Having said all that, let's start off with the playbook itself and the formations. When we create a playbook in 06 or any of these games, we have to pick formations to create the playbook. So that's where we'll start. Now, the first thing I want to mention about the offense is the personnel itself. The Colts love to use a lot of 11 and 12 personnel sets. And what that means is one halfback and one tight end, or one halfback and two tight ends. And as you see over here at the formation list, we got plenty of that. We have a 12 here, a 12 personnel set there, an 11, an 11. This is a 20, but we're going to convert this to 11, and I'll show you why later on. This is another 11, an 11, and we have two 10s, and we can convert those to 11s via sub-packages. So that's the first thing, is the personnel. Now, I always suggest that you tailor to your offense or to your players as best you can until you can recruit to that 11 and 12 personnel. But at least that gives you an idea of what they like to do from a formation standpoint. Now, I want to mention the receivers, in particular the X and the Z receiver. Now, for this, like we'll take this formation, for example, ace normal. They have X receiver right here and a Z receiver right there. For the Colts, it was always, Reggie Wayne was on the left side and Marvin Harrison was on the right. They never switched that up. One was always on one side, the other was always on the right side. They just never changed it up. They kept it consistent for several reasons. The biggest reason was it was just easier to read defenses that way and to simplify it for those receivers. So if you look at all of these formations that I have picked, we have X on one side, Z on the other. For every single one of these, it just gives your playbook a bit of consistency, and it helps your depth chart a little bit. It simplifies it some for your wide receivers. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of the formations is you notice there's just a lot of ace and shotgun formations. That's what they went with. It's the easiest thing to do to mimic an offense is to at least go by which formations they run. At least you can show a similar look to what they was trying to do. It may be difficult to pick the plays that mimic what they try to run, but at least you can get the formations down. And thankfully, in a game like this, all of their more popular formations are in here. So they also were pretty even split between ace and shotgun. So I try to make it even as possible. We got 4 ace and 5 shotgun. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before we go to the field and talk about the offense in general, and that is the audibles. This offense was very audible heavy. If you watch any of those games back in the day, Peyton Manning was calling something different like practically every play. It could have been a hot route. It could have been an audible. It could have been a fake of something. But he was always doing a little bit of something. So if you really want to mimic this offense, I highly suggest you emphasize audibles. You can do the standard audibles here, or you can do the quick audibles when you're at the play selection screen. you can hit, I think it's R1 plus either X, square, or circle to quickly map 3 extra ones. So make good use of that along with the hot routes. Having said all that, what you need to do in order to fully use that is to go to your settings and make sure you have home field advantage turned off. That way you can run all your audibles and hot routes both home and on the road. Now let's go to the field and talk about some of the plays and other things about the offense. The first thing I want to talk about in terms of the little small things about the offense is the motion or the lack thereof. The Colts just never used motion. I think they wanted to simplify things. It was easier for Manning to read the defense if everybody just stood still, and he could adjust accordingly to what the defense was going to do to that formation. So don't feel like you need to run any motion or use any motion at all in this offense. That simplifies your pre-snap a little bit, but you got to compensate some of that with a lot of the audibles and hot routes you'll be doing pre-snap. So let's talk about the run game. I think the run game, they kept it super simple. They ran a lot of inside zone, a lot of outside zone. If you remember, a good example is from Ace Normal. We'll start here. Now, with Ace Big Tight End Wide Receiver, I usually treat this as my goal line formation. So I want to talk about the other ones a little bit more. With Ace Normal, halfback tackle is a lot like the outside stretch zone play they would use. So I would use that some. Otherwise, I would really use a lot of halfback slam and some halfback dive unless you're going up against like some odd fronts and such. And that is kind of it. You do not need to get crazy with the run game. So between that from Ace Normal, which was their base 12 personnel set, that was the one they went to like 95% of the time when they went to it. But when you go to Ace Slot, again, you could use Sting, Slam, and then Dive. And thankfully, those handful should be in Ace Wide Trips as well. Halfback Dive. And then you could use Sting there. I don't think Slam is in this particular formation, but you won't need it. So when you are under center, especially with these 3 formations, and you can include this one if you want to, but with these 3 formations, think a lot of running and play action off of that. Nobody ran more play action than the Colts did when Manning was there. So you can go back to Ace Normal, PA rollout, any of those work really good. PA counter's pretty good. PA strike's not bad. It's a little slow, but you can make it work. We can go to Ace Slot, and you can look at, here's PA rollout. That's a really good one. You can do some cool hot route adjustments with it. And PA halfback out is pretty good as well. And you can go to Ace Wide Trips. There's some good ones here. PA deep post, that's a good left hash play. And PA boot right, I like it pretty good as well. So when you're under center, really concentrate on running and play action off that. You can also do some short passing too from this. Curl flats, or you can do something similar like quick slants is pretty good. I'm just trying to think of really quick drop back stuff you can use from a couple of these. Ace Wide Trips, curl flat, cross ends pretty good. Just going through tight end corners pretty good as well. And they didn't do many screens either. I guess they didn't feel like they didn't need to. But you get my point. Basically, when you're under center, just kind of think run and play action. But once you get to the shotgun, that's when things can get pretty interesting. Now, we'll start with gun normal. I think 90% of their offense came from either gun normal, Ace Slot, or Ace Normal. Those are the big 3. They would go trips every once in a while, like you see with gun wide trips and Ace wide trips. But they love going 2x2 sets because you see number 1 and number 4 on the far left and 82 and 7 on the right. Just a 2x2, even look. And when you go into the shotgun plays, you can still run play action. You can still run the ball. We can start with those. When you run the ball from this particular formation, there's not a whole lot here, halfback off tackle, but PA read is great. Then you have, I would suggest, there's another one. PA wide receiver in is pretty good too. Then you go to Ace Wide Trips. PA read is really good. PA wide receiver in is a good left hash play. And then when it comes to the running from here, you can do halfback direct or QB choice. Just treat it as an off-tackle run. Unfortunately, the draws don't work all that great in this game. The under center ones work fine. You can implement those if you feel like it. Again, feel free to change whatever you need to. I'm just kind of giving you some direction. And of course, from gun spread and gun trips, what I want to talk about here, again, it's no different. You can run, do play action off of these. But I want to talk about, before we get into the sub packages, let's talk about the 2 or 3 main concepts that the Peyton Manning really liked to run. Unfortunately, they're not in this game, but that's not that big of a deal. The point of it is, the first one they really like to do was a 3 vertical concept, sort of like a good example would be like deep attack. They always had a one signature deep ball look, which was again like a 3 deep vertical look. And then they had like a short concept that they absolutely loved, which was like a levels concept. Levels isn't in this game. A good example of this would be like I could show you with deep attack. If I hot routed, this ain't going to really show it. Let's see if I can move him up. That's sort of like a levels concept. You got a deeper dig with an underneath dig underneath that. Unfortunately, it's not in 06, but again, you don't really need it. You just need a good short drop back passing concept of some sort. Like from gun spread, it could be wide receiver curls, like a basic curl flat or something similar. Again, that's totally up to you, especially for those who really know how to run this, a lot of these plays and such. Curl flat's like the most common, but you can also do like halfback angle is a really good one. You got an out route, and then you got the hitch, but the angle route is the halfback route itself. So you got some really good options there. And the third big concept that they were really into was the play action itself, which I kind of covered. Just make sure you pick a good play action concept that you really like out of a lot of these formations, and I think you're going to be fine. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the sub packages. If you remember, I talked about this formation right here. We can switch this up by putting our tight end at the other halfback spot. Every now and then, the Colts would do this. Dallas Clark was an incredible tight end back in the day. And if you go to practice strategy, you can go to formation subs. Unfortunately, this particular formation does not have a sub package where you could put the tight end right here. But what you can do is just literally manually put a tight end right there. His numbers drop and such, but the only thing that really drops is his awareness. He can still catch the ball. He can still run. None of that changes. So if you want to get froggy with it, get really close to the offense, feel free to manually put a tight end right there. That still gives you 11 personnel. You still got 3 wide receivers, one tight end, and 1 running back. So it still gives you that look. Now, another thing that you can do is, again, actually use sub packages that fit what we're trying to do. This is why I added gun spread and gun trips. With gun spread, you can use the tight end slot sub package. That gives you the 11 personnel look. The same with this formation. Another 11 personnel set. You will notice the tight end is very important in this offense. If you can find a real stud tight end, you can do some serious damage with this scheme. So that's pretty much the entire playbook. I just wanted to show you which formations I would put together and a little bit about the offense in general. And hopefully this gives you some direction. And if you want to use that in your dynasty, by all means, go ahead and do it. I look forward to making more of these videos, and I'll talk to you later.